Hey, that's us.
All right.
Goedemorgen.
Goedemorgen.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Brian.
Hi.
Brian, how are you, man? Long
I'm
time
good.
no see.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while, yeah. Last time I saw you was actually when we worked here, right?
We had two sessions. I think after the second session, we might have done did we do Mayday together after that? Maybe one gig.
Oh,
after?
Yeah. True. Yeah. So yeah, how have you been, man?
I've been good. I mean, it was like a pretty dramatic year so far. Good and bad, It's like
Yeah.
at
least you're looking very sharp with those glasses.
It's my new look. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got Dave joining us from
Dave
Amsterdam.
Is now Black Asteroid.
Yeah, there's no competition. Sorry, Dave.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good. It's been a great and interesting year, actually. But yeah, finally got my butt in the studio over the last few months and dropped all the fatigue from 30 years of touring. And yeah, I mean, it's really, really good and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite. And
Good to have you.
Looking forward to tonight and discussing nerdy things.
Yeah. So has it been, you say, a welcome break from 30 years of touring? Have you been finding more energy to get into the studio and to do other things and stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of us didn't even recognize it or didn't want to recognize it. But for those of us that have been touring for so long, it's been exhausting. And it was just a roller coaster that kept going. And I have to admit, like for the first, I think 4 or 5 months, I was just enjoying the unseasonable good weather that the Netherlands were having at the time and just getting free vitamin D. And then started working in the studio, working on different projects, classical project with a violinist called Mathilde Marcel, Francais. And we did a program in Paris called Le Grand Échiquier, which, as you can hear, my accent in French is certainly better than Dutch, which is a 50-year-old program, or almost, and it's the first time they've actually, to my knowledge, invited an electronic artist. So, and that was because of the classical piece that we did in Charles de Gaulle the year before. And so we did that, and me and Mathilde have been working in Amsterdam for a couple of months now. So yeah, it's been très intéressant.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. Well, I'm very curious how that all came together, but we'll get back to that after I introduce Jess, Black Lotus, looking very pink today.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you? Joining us from Berlin, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm quite good. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. What have you been up to?
Well, I was at the studio quite a while. So I was, just producing new music and improving some skills and learning some new stuff. Yeah, using the free time.
What did you learn?
Well, actually, I was improving my vinyl skills, to be honest, because when I was touring last year, when I had free time, I would most probably produce. So now it was just a time to use to dig. I just bought some new vinyl here. So yeah, just trying to improve that.
Okay, sounds great. And you are in your studio right now? Is this your?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have your DJ setup and your music making gear all collected in one place.
Yeah, you can see my DJ setup here a little bit. It's my turntable and my CDJs and another turntable here. My producing stuff is at this wall, so you cannot see it because the cam is from there.
Okay, cool. So I was actually I did some checking and researching and everything, and I stumbled upon this old video from you, Dave, in I think it was 7 or 8 years old, when you were in the studio producing a track, and I quite enjoyed watching that one. And what I noticed is that you are really, really obsessed about meters and what is that about? Is it making you feel more confident in what you're hearing, if you can actually see what's going on?
I have to admit, I think it was a sort of transitional phase where I was used to a lot more hardware with a lot more visual feedback than I was getting. So yes, I was heavily into my Waves Duro meters, but my Mac situation has changed because at that point it was a Mac Pro 2012, so like the old cheese grater, and I could run 3 screens off it. And I've now got the new Mac Pro, and I went down to 1 screen. So I don't have so many meters, but at the same time, I do have like a physical, trusty DK audio real meter, like a physical thing. And I use that for like a stereo gonometer and fast Fourier transformation, and just to get a feel, and sometimes to see the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th harmonics actually in action if I'm doing precise EQing, to see where I'm zoning in on. But yeah, I was slightly heavily into meters at that time. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering because when I'm producing something, I never really pay attention to those things. It's just I'm just basically just getting it out, and I'll deal with some of that stuff when I know I need to. But other than that, if I never check things visually. To be honest, but I get a lot of people here in the studio who are, when you sit down with them, first thing they do is, go to things like EQs and roll off like 30 hertz and below, and before they ever go into the sort of the musical part, just get all the technical things sorted out. And I must admit, I'm just too lazy to get into that. I wanna hear things and.
We probably approach it from a different angle, though, because we probably approach it from different angles, because I get the feeling that you really are into keyboards, for example, and other things like that. And I never was into keyboards. I was much more into engineering. And so that's my thing. That's where I get really excited about. I mean, for a lot of people, I think the end, making the track at the very, very end, making everything make sense, is where, when I was teaching at SAE, that's when they get really frustrated and flustered and confused. So I would actually, I love making the end part where everything makes sense. So I think engineering, I come from it really from an engineering perspective more than keyboards.
Yeah, well, you call it keyboards. I'm not a poly guy. I don't really like keyboards, and I don't even play keyboards. But yeah, I do like. I love synths. Mostly mono synths though. But yeah, my work method is probably the last. Well, it's always been like that, but I've always recorded my tracks live. Like either making a song structure in sort of MPC style by chaining patterns, or just playing the whole thing out live, and then just make the arrangement live, and then just sort of clean up things and.
Which means you can't do macro analysis because everything is.
Well, I've done it, but it's I really admire people who can, because but I just don't have the patience for it. You know what I mean? It's like it's this process that is it's a very technical process, and I just get impatient when when I'm dealing with that stuff. But again, I admire people who can, and who are sort of getting into
it really sexy. I find it so sexy. That whole part is just so sexy. Getting everything to really mathematically
makes you feel like a scientist or something.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Because if you remember back to the old days, we'd be the only idiots that had computers, really. Most people would have an analog phone which glowed green with the buttons, and maybe if you pressed it enough times, you could send an SMS if you were lucky. And we were sitting with computers feeling like scientists. And I think it just comes from that, of just that whole thing of being in a really cool room with lots of things actually physically happening with machines. And I just love that whole engineering part. It's just the most, it's like a symphony. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But everyone has different ways.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But the thing is, working with hardware for me, what the good thing for me is that it is sort of creating things in the moment rather than spending lots of time listening on repeat to things and sort of honing in on details.
Yeah.
And I just, it's sort of like DJing, you know what I mean? If you're DJing, you are basically in the moment and you're just going with whatever is happening in real time. And I like the feeling of when you're doing something in real time, your perception of time kind of changes. You are sort of, it's sort of like it slows down or something. I don't know. You're more sort of focused on the moment and in the zone and something like that. And it's that's where I feel most comfortable. When things are just happening and when I can react to things that are happening. And
so, Clarke, question.
Yeah.
So, if you go back in time, one of my favorite all-time classic tracks within techno is yours, which is actually Rise. For me, it's absolutely timeless. It's such a beautiful, constructed piece of music, and it epitomizes 90s techno, but it's also timeless and still works now. Did you do Rise in that same format of just in one go, or
Yeah.
just wow?
Actually, I was cleaning up my DAT archive with the help of my friend Fritz here in the studio, and I found two other versions which have a different arrangement, and they have a slightly. Sorry.
Did you cut digitally after that, or was that before digital editing?
No, they were. Yeah, I mean the process then was just have everything split out on a mixing desk and then just fade in and fade out stuff and mute and unmute like dub style, And so that was how the track was arranged. There was never arrangement which was linear. It was basically just a loop. That's why it sounds like it is a loop. Like I think a 32 bar loop or something, and just keep adding stuff and taking stuff away. But yeah, there are two different versions of which I chose the one that I eventually released, but they were all recorded in real time. Yeah, so I think the other one I dismissed because they were too long. They were just too long. I remember when I recorded the track, I spent like the evening writing the parts, and then I mixed it down or recorded it when the sun was coming up. So by that time, things become too lengthy and too sort of spun out. So I chose the shortest one.
But you didn't do any post editing.
No, not even mixing. It was sort of in real time. Yeah. Just anyway. So how does it work for you, Brian? Because I know you are very much an in the box writing tracks, arranging tracks in a linear, on a timeline kind of vibe, right? That's how you?
Yeah. I write with a song format. I'm all about classic song structure. So verse, chorus, bridge, middle eight, breakdown, whatever. But I have to say, working with you was kind of opened my eyes, because I'm not a jammy guy. I don't go in the studio and just jam. I go in the studio and I have an idea what I want to produce. I have a riff in my head, something I heard in the radio, something I want to copy. I'll go in the studio with an idea before. I don't just go in and jam. But what I learned from working with you was it kind of opened me up to just this whole world of just jamming live and then finding parts, and then we did some editing after, but everything we did was pretty much live, which is goes against everything that I believe in. So.
And yet the stuff that we did together sounds very strong song structure ish.
It sounds like we knew what we were doing. We planned the arrangement, which we didn't. But
no,
there's definitely an arrangement that I think is missing. When people jam, I want to hear a verse. I want to hear dynamics. And if you don't define a verse and a chorus, or it just all goes forever. So that's the only thing that's the thing I always try to do, is have that dynamic between loud and heavy every 16 bars. So
Right. So do you structure things in advance and then sort of filling in the blanks to,
I'll
or
start with like a loop, like a 16-bar loop, and I'll add all the parts, and then I'll copy it. I'll lay out the arrangement in 5 minutes, and then I'll just mute stuff, and I'll just find what could be a verse, what could be a chorus, what could be a bridge, and then some additive sounds. But basically, writing on a 32-bar loop is many sounds that I think go together, and then after that, doing an arrangement, maybe the next day, you know. So it's two steps for me. It's not one; it's two different processes. The writing
Right.
part, and then the arrangement part, and then if I'm inspired, I'll do a vocal or something. But
yeah, I guess when you do vocals in your music, then you automatically end up
with an
getting
arrangement,
yeah.
a linear arrangement,
Yeah.
So, and also I've been limiting myself to about 8 channels of audio because I'm always been a minimalist. But if I can make a song really speak with 8 channels, I'm really happy, because I think every instrument has something to say. But once you have like 40 sounds going on, I feel like maybe the song itself is getting lost. So I'm always pulling myself back. And
That's called the British School of Recording, Brian.
is it?
Yeah, there's different schools of recording. There's like the British School of Recording, the American School of Recording. And the British School of Recording dates back to like the 50s and 60s, because we were still post-war and poor, something which is going to happen after another political thing that we can't talk about. And then because in those days they could only record, say, like an 8-channel mixing recorder. And in America, they would have 16 or even 24. And then it would then make all the decisions later on and say, we can fix it in the mix and give it to the mixing engineer.
Right.
Whereas British people, because they only had like 8 channels, would then have to go, we have to make decisions now and then work on those decisions to progress through the song. And it's quite good to limit yourself.
That's something that comes up. Yeah, it comes up every time we have these chats, you know, like every artist finds ways to not get lost in the infinite amount of possibilities, and finds their own way of limiting themselves to, you know, to tell the story, basically, because that's really what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best records are made on 8 tracks, 16 tracks maybe, but
or 4 tracks even sometimes.
Yeah.
Jess, how do you work?
Quite similar. I'd record everything live and then edit everything in Ableton, and then analog mastering at the end.
Am I allowed to drink? Is that
Yeah,
Thanks,
please
Brian.
do.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
So you're saying you're recording hardware, or
Yeah, so I would record analogically with some hardware, some machines, and like I would just record the whole live jam, mix everything live in real time, and at the end I would just make some small edits, sometimes bigger edits, depends, in Ableton, and then I would just master it analogically if it's possible.
Do you go down to 2 tracks of audio and then edit, or do you actually have stems that you can edit?
It depends, but mostly I have more tracks than 2.
No, but when you've actually done your jam with all the machines, do you record into 2 tracks and then do an edit of that, or do you actually record everything separately and then edit from that?
Separately, because I use a lot of effects and it would be just too messy.
So yeah, you're multi-tracking everything, so you can still even though it's
just
a live jam, you can still mute stuff or you know, get rid of stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't like to limit myself, so try to keep all the options.
It is a form of limitation, because you assign yourself to record something in real time. You know, that is a limitation by itself, I guess.
Yeah, I just mean like when I record it, after that, I just don't limit myself in using effects and everything, because it's multi-tracked, so I can still have all the more possibilities. Yeah.
So what kind of hardware do you have lying around there?
Right now, it's a Dave Smith Tetra at TB303. I have some of the Roland Boutique stuff, like the TR09, the TR8, but I mostly use the TB303, to be honest. And sometimes the Dark Energy, but on rare occasions.
Okay, cool. And you say you master it? You master it all the way for use for release, or do you give it to a second pair of ears once you're done with it?
I do my digital mastering myself, but for the touch up, I give this to Florian Meindl, and
Okay.
he does everything because I don't even have the capacity to master, because he does this for so many years. He has all this hardware, so it's just plain impossible to do it myself.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, great quality as well. The masterings are just really good. So.
Hiroko is asking
No.
if that's Jarvis. Well, actually, no.
Maybe she doesn't know who I am. I'm talking here. I was afraid she would join. She's nothing but trouble, that woman.
Anyone record still to analog tape here? Hiroko is asking.
Oh, those are fun days. 2-inch tape. That's before we got into digital. It was all 2-inch tape. That's probably
azimuth misalignment, jumpers for goalposts.
Dave, did you ever get into cutting the 2-inch tape, doing edits like that?
My dad did.
Okay.
My dad actually had reel-to-reel and the cutting block, and I still remember the smell of chalk on the cutting block. My first records were recorded to reel-to-reel. I had a really interesting conversation when I was teaching at SAE, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I always ask students what things are, because I think they need to know what they're using plugins for and how they develop to where they get to now. And I said, does anyone know what reel-to-reel is? And a really sweet young Australian guy, really young actually, his parents allowed him to be out the country to learn. And he went, yeah, it's something that's real that's going to something that's real. And I thought that was really sweet. Because every lesson I did, does anyone remember cassettes and the numbers that go up, the hands go up, there's less and less and less.
Yeah.
But I did have a reel-to-reel tape machine when I first started. I bought a secondhand 2-track from Akai, and I have to be honest, the amount of headroom even something like that had compared to anything else was like 20 dB extra headroom.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. But I don't record to analog tape for ages now. On the last album, Desecration of Desire, I was thinking of actually having it put to tape and then half-speed mastering. But actually, to be fair, the half-speed mastering did the job anyway of giving that warmth. But I do use something which I've had for quite some time, which is about 23 years old now, which is a Crane Song HEDDD, a head, which is a harmonic distortion device, which actually gives second, third, and fifth harmonic distortion in a way that the tape machine might do. This is obviously before plugins. But I have to be honest, for a 20-year-old machine, it does add some of that warmth and weird stuff. But sometimes I play with plugins on waves and fuck around with the. Am I allowed to swear, Joachim? I can't remember. Is that
of course
okay?
you can. Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
And play around with the wow and flutter as if I was in some sort of grunge group. And you can do some really interesting stuff with the wow and flutter because you can automate it. I know that's not going to be something that's Joachim's favorite of spending time drawing a line, but I'm sure you can find a software knob that you could do it. And actually drawing lines of wow and flutter. So actually you can actually have it modulate with the music in a really, really interesting way. And then I found another plugin from.
Would you do that on a master or as an individual on an individual track? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
I'd add triad and pentoed on a master, but not do that not unless it's like a track that I want to have that weird effect. But there's another thing which I've always wanted, because some of my first tracks were mastered to cassette, and there is something to be said about the sound of cassette. And there's a guy called Jesus who has a plugin place in Spain called Waves Factory, and he came up with this cassette plugin, and it's really brilliant actually, because sometimes you're working on, because all my synths are soft synths. I know that's probably sacrilege for everyone that's watching here, but all my outboard is analog, so everything comes out and actually goes through analog channels anyway. And I sometimes use that on some soft synths, or there's another thing which is called Samplex, where you can change the bit rate. And I used to work a lot on Sonic samplers, and they strangely had a 13-bit bit rate, that really sounded crunchy but organic, and I would use sometimes different types of various saturation to get that analog tape effect in a short answer.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, tape is wonderful, but it's also very limited. You like you said, you have a lot of headroom to play with. So if you would just record something in a very conservative level, it'll sound totally different with every added sort of dB. If you can go from just a really nice slightly tape sounding stuff to really compressed, which makes the highs kind of smear out and the bass more full and everything. So there's a lot of settings in between that you can use. I haven't actually mastered things to tapes. I've done one project here with Phil Kieran, and we were doing we were in the sort of electroacoustic mood, like using objects to make sounds and stuff like that. And at some point, I've got one guitar lying around here, and we were doing. We could both play 2 chords, so we did a 3-chord 3-chord loop or something, just a very basic thing, and just kept running the guitar through different things and just kept stacking, different sounding layers basically. And we, it felt all punky and just really rough, and it became like a wall of sound. And then we were like, man, all these layers, and it sounds really, vibey now. Let's just do it the old school way and just record straight to reel. And we did that. So we did the live mixing on the board, and just changing volumes and EQs a little bit along the track, and that was one that was committed straight to tape without any chance of doing anything afterwards, which was sometimes it's a great feeling, you know what I mean? Just go for it.
And you have to spend money on the tape as well, so it's a double commitment. It's like you have to spend a lot of money on the actual analog tape, so you're committing to it financially, which is difficult, I think, for younger generations to understand about that financial commitment of various different stages of production. So you'd have to buy that, and then boom, it's there. Phil's incredibly talented. I mean, seriously incredibly talented. But I'll tell you a funny story about Phil. Legend has it in Belfast that he used to have a bell in his studio that he used to ring, and his mum used to bring him dinner. And this was only a few years ago.
That's a really good feature in any studio. ring your mum for dinner. Amazing. Well, don't blame him, right? No, but it's cool that kind of way that really appeals to me. Just because in computers you can just keep postponing your decisions. And I just like situations where I'm put on the spot. Okay, are we going this way or that way? And then just do it and just commit with it. Commit to it.
Commitment is so important.
Yeah,
commitment is so important. It's commitment. If you commit to doing something, then you can make another decision afterwards and adapt to it. And if you leave everything to be processed later on, then you're left in a fluster because you have no clue. Because you have
how do you deal with that when you're using when you're working exclusively in the box? Because I mean, I admire people who can, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that I find myself at some point only doing very small increments and very small changes that don't really contribute to the end result as much as like the hours spent on something minute and very small detail. I would rather spend that on starting something new. You know what I mean? That's how impatient I am.
Are you asking me or?
Yeah. I'm asking you because you are obviously a big fan of working in the box and getting to that engineering mode and just tweak until you're happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I first of all, I also admire the freedom that you have, and actually also working with someone that's not in the analog realm, because a violin is an instrument, not an analog instrument. It's an instrument. Working with someone that doesn't need electricity, can actually just set up their violin and then boom, straight into it, you can be jealous of that because it's so liberating. It's the same thing as someone that can just step up to a piano and do something. And then when I see what you guys can do, and people that actually can jam, and not actually just jam, but actually make sense of it, so it's not some sort of weird, no story thing. And obviously that takes a long time to get. I admire that. But with Studio, I do work in the box, but I also work outside the box. So what happens is that all my writing is in the box, and I'm so used to sequences because I've been using Logic since it was Notator, when it was like in the 80s. I was using even a BBC B computer with Umi way back when, which I think Vince Clarke used to use. And then I use Cubase. And so I'm so used to having the computer as the central hub of writing, and obviously not being able to actually sit and play a piano or anything like that. But it's the only option that was available to me, really, unless I wanted to increase my playing ability. So I write everything in there, and now with Logic X, it's been my go-to for so many years. It's so reliable, fantastically flexible. The layering that you can do, the flourishes that you can add that actually have a space to breathe, that you can just drop an EQ out just to allow another sound in. It's amazing to do that. And
so
then
at what point do you think, okay, I'm going to commit to this?
I commit to everything instantly. So I'll probably be like Jess, having loads of ideas, and then I'll be like Brian and having a structure from the get-go. And then you do that muting game, which sometimes I still try and play the game of beat the cursor before it gets there and mute to try and make some structure of it. Then when you got a structure, you work out what's going on. Then you can then you start committing to everything. So you start committing to the engineering decisions that you've done with regards to EQ. Everything then gets shipped out to a different compressor. Everything then goes into a mixing desk. So it goes in the analog realm. And then I'll record it down through EQ, through the head, the Cranesong head, and it comes back into Wavelab Steinberg Wavelab. And then I'll record, that's the commitment, and then it's done. And then I also do pre-mastering and mastering as well.
Okay, so basically you end up with a stereo track.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you don't mix in the box in such a way that you can reopen it and keep tweaking. There's a moment where you think, okay, this is it now. Yeah, of course. Okay.
It's really important, because otherwise you're lost in space.
Yeah, exactly. And your time gets it's just evaporates, I guess. Yeah.
And you make good decisions, even if you made a bad decision on printing a sound, like in a track, you can still change it and then use it in some other ways. And then you make decisions on top of that. So everything becomes really organic in the way that it grows. Yeah, I've worked with Brian, actually, and we do work in a similar way, actually. We do work to a structured thing. And I could never be like Brian or like Steve or like Surgeon and come into your studio and you go, let's jam. I'll be like, no, I can't do that. It's not my discipline. I would be absolutely stage fright to be in that situation.
Yeah, it's funny.
but the reason why Dave and I don't use Ableton is because apparently Ableton only works in small Berlin apartments. It just doesn't have the same. I love Ableton though. I got to admit, I'm also a Logic Audio diehard since forever, since I had Cubase before that, I think. But I love Logic Audio, and I think it's because it's just built on the linear arrangement, but the sound is just for me a little bit more crisp, not crisp, maybe more dynamic in the highs and lows than Ableton. It's just something I got used to, and then like the ES2 monosynth inside of Logic, I make not all, but I make a lot of my sounds on that from scratch, and you really can't really tell the difference between that and analog. In modular stuff, it sounds maybe even more warm and wild. So that's why I'm in Logic, because I haven't run out of ideas yet. I'm not run out of like options. And when I run out of those options, then I'll go downstairs and grab a keyboard, or I got like a lunchbox with modulars. But I really like comfortable with Logic. But then when I saw Joachim working with Ableton, I understand the appeal. It seems to be a bit more intuitive and quicker to get ideas going.
Well, it's I would say that I'm using just a I'm just scratching the surface with Ableton, and it could be anything really. It's just I'm using it more or less like Jez does as a tape recorder, you know, like a multi-track recorder,
Right.
because all the sources are hardware.
Your hardware, yeah.
I mean, I've done it. You know, I've done entire productions in Logic. I've done entire productions in Ableton. Before that, I used Cubase, you know, on the Atari, and before that, I had hardware sequencers. So, you know, I'm used to a lot of different ways of doing things. But for a while, I was completely in the box, and everything just took longer. It wasn't really my workflow, you know what I mean? And I did get stuff done, you know. Eventually I got there, but it's just I'm more about the immediacy of things, you know. I always
you can take it straight on the road in that format. I can't. So you actually already have the format where you can go, okay, well, we can now actually perform this, which I think is something which you live and breathe for. Jess, did you always use Ableton? Did you start off with Ableton or?
Well, I tried Logic first, but then I switched to Ableton.
Any reason why?
I guess because everyone was using it. So it was because I was just starting. I had actually no clue what I was doing. It was easier for me just to get a glimpse of what I'm doing, because all the people would work with, and I could just easily, you know, see what they're doing and what the causes and consequences are.
And you say that you master your own material for digital. What do you master into?
How do you mean?
What is there a particular program that you use for mastering?
No, I just use fab filters a lot, like the limiters or the compressors and the EQ, and that's quite it, to be honest.
And you do that in Ableton as well?
Yeah, I do this in Ableton.
And do you do that on the output, or do you actually record into 2-track and then process it as a separate track on Ableton?
No, I process as separate tracks.
Right. What was the first sequencer you ever used, Brian?
I don't know if you remember the Amiga computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a program called Bars and Pipes. Did anyone use that?
I've seen it, but I've seen it. It's almost like a Donkey Kong, but for music.
It was.
Is it the tracker?
It's a MIDI sequencer. I used that for like one album, and then I switched to Cubase after that, and then Cubase to Logic. But what I would do is I would have all my songs on Cubase, 24 tracks, go to a studio, and then put each track down on 2-inch tape on a 24 track separately.
Did you have to lock it with SMPTE?
Yes.
That was horrible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we had to do a couple passes. I remember. Yeah, that part was hard. But you get the song where you want it to, and then you run it to tape, and then from tape you run it through the mixer, and then you do your mix. But it's a good mix of having committed to an arrangement, but also getting the feel of a live mix that has the parts you like. So it was. I thought those days of 2-inch tape were fun with computers.
I remember SMPTE. It's one of the reasons why I actually learned how to produce, because I actually had my first record out on Excel, and they sent me to a recording studio and I had like 2 tracks coming out my sampler at the time, so we had to record everything separately. And for some reason, the guy had problems recording SMPTE, and it took a whole fucking day of hearing this.
Yeah.
And it just drove me up the wall. And then you learn loads of things about it. Like you can only have your hi-hats on track 15, because if you have your bass drum or anything like that, the bleed through of the high frequencies of SMPTE will cross talk over. God, those days, huh?
There's actually a few old house records. I don't know the label. I'm very bad at names, but you can hear the time code track running through the music. Yeah. That's funny. Hey, Tadeo, our friend is Miguel is here.
Oh, nice.
Somebody using Pro Tools.
Nay, but don't.
No.
Well, I use it a lot when I isolate vocals, and I like the effects and stuff in Pro Tools for producing vocals.
What do you mean by effects?
The sound. Like I mean, the people I work with when I record vocals, they have Pro Tools, and I quite like how I like the compressors. I see the appeal of it, but it seems to be more lends itself more to live music.
But don't you find Logic is more capable than
Oh yeah,
Pro Tools?
I prefer Logic, of course, but Pro Tools does have a lot of people at Pro Tools also have the hardware components, so their effects are running through hardware.
Right.
So and they do have those really high end hardware effects. So I can see the appeal with Pro Tools, but for me it would be more if I was doing a live band kind of thing.
So what's your process, Brian? You basically demo your stuff in your home studio, and then you take it out. You take your laptop or whatever, and you multi-track it and add your vocals in a proper vocal booth or something. Is that how it works?
I do some vocals at home, but when I want to do proper vocals, or if I'm working with real singers, I definitely prefer in a studio, and only because better sound isolation for vocals and really nice microphones and stuff. But yeah, I do all the music at home. I get it 99% where I want it, and then I'll stem it out and add the vocals either at home or somewhere else. And mixing, I mean, I'm mixing at home, but again, I prefer doing that in a studio. I don't know. I'm just kind of old school that way. I like to hear it loud on big speakers, and maybe at your studio. I like going to people's studios and banging up their speakers. Chris, do you have
like a reference piece of music so you can understand the acoustics?
Yeah. I always use either a Violator or a Pretty Hate Machine, 9 Inch Nails. Those are records I really know sonically, so I often use those to get a feel for a studio.
I use Stevie Wonder or Donald Fagen.
Okay.
Which is probably not expected by most people. The Nightfly is a great album, and I've got like a DVD audio version of that, which is like phenomenal. It was one of the first albums recorded to digital, and it doesn't sound fragile or brittle at all.
Yeah.
Who here enjoys starting off a track?
Starting off a track?
Yeah.
I do.
Jess?
Yeah, why not?
Brian?
I don't know. I think it becomes fun once you have an idea that you like. It's like at the beginning, it just feels like, okay, here's a kick drum.
Exactly.
Okay, let's put something cool on it. And then once you have like a good bass, a good synth, and a good kick drum happening, then you're off. Then you're off to the races. Then you can do I always go like kick drum, synthesizer, closed hat, clap or snare, and that's a system. That's how I like to write in that order. But I don't get excited until there's a good synth part, a good bass line.
Jess, how do you start? Do you start with a bass drum or bass line or?
Yeah, definitely. Very similar to Black Asteroid.
Cool.
Joachim?
I usually come up with a system. I build a setup for every project, and sometimes the setup stays there for a few days, or sometimes for weeks. Like there's a sort of like a jamming island here in the middle, and there's no way I can connect all the gear that in one sort of fixed setup here, and that would also bore the shit out of me. I've had studios where things were set up like that, with patch bays, and in theory you could basically connect everything to everything else, but you would never do it because one synth would be in that part of the room, and then you would go and run it through a filter or a pedal which was over there, and it would just completely Frankenstein me out. It was terrible. So, and since nobody's capable of using more than, I don't know, 8 or 10 sources in writing a piece of music, I decided this was the best way to do it, just to have everything just on the wall available there to take or to pick whenever I want. And then when I think of a system, I'm sort of, it's like I'm in sort of nerd mode, what would happen if I run this through this, or when I connect that to this sequencer or that, filter machine, whatever. And because, individual pieces of gear become much more versatile if you start combining them with others, and I'm just having a lot of fun thinking about just fantasizing about what would happen if, that's the fun part for me. And then I come up with the system, I connect it in a certain way, and that's my start. I just press start and sort of explore the range and see where it can go, and without an idea at all. And I just kind of latch on to whatever I think is interesting that I can get out of it, and that becomes the start of my track.
Do you have like subconscious dreams where you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, oh yeah, that will work, and then you remember the next day, it's like, yeah, this is going to be like one hell of a track?
Yeah, maybe not necessarily in my dreams, but yeah, I do sometimes. When I'm on a walk, with the dogs or whatever, sometimes I think, that's something I should try, and then sometimes I don't even end up trying it, but it's just cool to think about it, just fantasizing. You're using your imagination and sort of think of what could happen, and of course it doesn't happen when you end up actually doing it, but it's a good starting point. It's like with making music, it is just a matter of starting things, just start some, in a kind of work kind of way, just instead of sitting behind a screen or sitting behind a piece of hardware and try, wait until the muse comes, it's just my method is just start things, just to start twisting knobs and running cables and
is that how you fight? Is that how you fight writer's block? Do you ever get writer's block?
No, I never do. I mean, I can have periods where I'm not really getting what I really like to get, but I've actually, the last years, I've kind of sort of put it out of my head to arrive at a certain sound or a certain result, and just let things happen. And whatever happens, and I either like what happened or I don't. So, and if I don't, I dismiss it or bin it. And if I like it, I finish it and put it get it to vinyl or something. So it's as long as I'm keep creating things and keep trying things out, sometimes something comes along which I'm happy with. That's just the way it goes.
Just do you actually have tracks that you think, oh shit, that's not going anywhere, and do you save them? Do you ever go back to them?
Oh yeah, a hell amount of it. I have so many tracks I started when I was not very skilled. I had all these ideas, but didn't really know how to put them all together in terms of arrangement and sound design and in general. So yeah, right now with every track, I'm getting a little bit better. So I'm thinking of all these things, and sometimes I get back to them and just get a nice sequence. I record it like from a 303 jam or something, and then use it now with all the knowledge I gained in the past years. So yeah, I never trash anything. No.
So before we went live, you said you spent a lot of time in the studio and you learned a lot of new things. What's the latest things you've gained knowledge about, or changed your way of working, or that you find out?
Well, I would say it was the first time I really had collaborations with people. So it was the first time I really had to make tracks with other people, and this was really challenging because it was obviously the first time. But it went quite well. It was really, really inspiring to have this kind of symbiotic feeling, especially because the person is in the same niche and has the same mindset when it comes to the techno we do. So yeah, it was really nice to learn that, to channel ideas and to have the balance with another person and to make something with another person.
And do you feel you are adopting roles when you're working with another person, like some collaborations? The one person takes on the role of the person who sort of makes the rhythms, or is more into sound design part of the thing, or is sort of you know what I mean? Is it?
Yeah, I completely know what you mean, and I'm usually better in the rhythms. I would say I'm not so well in writing melodies or something. It's something I never done before. So I always try to get the opposite role just to learn it, just to be like in German we say we jump into the cold water. It's just to be to face the thing I never do and be with someone who maybe is better or probably is better than me. I try to do this. I never stay in the same role.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I remember
I
when
think it's important to have roles sometimes, that define roles, or at least have an idea of what kind of role each person plays when you're in a studio situation, because it gives you some constraint. Like when I came to your studio, we were jamming, and then I just picked up a microphone, and then you just took over the music, and we took turns, and it's just nice when like everyone knows their strength or what they're gonna add. I kind of like having some quasi-defined roles in a studio. I don't know.
Yeah, what I remember from when we worked together is that I would kind of make a setup with and which produced some kind of sound or basis, and then you would kind of disappear in the corner behind your laptop and started writing words to whatever beats and things that were going on. And it was funny because sometimes I looked around and I saw Brian smirking, like writing evil lyrics and shit.
Yeah, there's some evil lyrics. Yeah.
Did he go at any point?
I don't think I did. Yeah, I forgot to do that.
No, it went quite well because the funny thing is I never really use or work with vocalists that much, but for some reason. For some reason, when you were writing the lyrics, and sometimes I would see what you were writing, it would actually change the direction of where I was taking the sounds at the moment when
right.
you know, and then at the moments where you lay down the vocals, you know, we basically finished the whole thing together.
Yeah,
and the structure kind of emerged in a very natural way.
You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it was quite a fun thing to do. Yeah, and of course sometimes we were both on the synths and drum machines at the same time. But to have you sort of drop out once in a while and write the vocals was kind of new to me, and it gave quite a good dynamic, because I knew you were coming up with something, but I couldn't hear it yet. You know what I mean? So
I never planned on it. I didn't plan on it, but somehow for me, vocals always adds something to music.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need it, but for me, it just takes it to another dynamic, another like thing happening.
Because I think it's the humanity that electronic music sometimes doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because we grew up with pop music and we're just accustomed to hearing like a voice?
I'm not sure. I just think it's something that's not quantized unless you really overprocess it. It's something that's from the human soul, and it just makes the whole project gel and not be so frigid, I think.
Yeah.
And it adds character, and it adds an insight. Maybe the singer or the performer is doing lyrics through metaphors, so you don't actually really know what the meaning is. So it has that extra dimension as well of not just being la la la, is it love that you're after, blah blah, whatever. It's something really deep and you don't know what it is. It could be someone's personal experience. You're just left to guess, and that's, I think, something which is really vital to long-standing good music.
Well, you know, people's voices we're used to hearing voices all our lives, you know, and it's a very recognizable form of communication. And even though lyrics might be written in such a way that it makes you guessing sometimes what it is about, it's still a very familiar sound, you know, of somebody's voice, listening to somebody's voice.
Yeah.
As opposed to vocal-less, instrumental electronic music, there's way more left to the imagination of the listener. You know, they make their own story, they make their own associations, you know. So there's something to say for both. But yeah, I do agree that what I found working with Brian, doing vocals, there is a much more communicative part to the music all of a sudden, you know. It's it feels more familiar because you hear somebody doing vocals. They're singing to you or speaking to you. Yeah.
Isn't it psychoacoustically also very relaxing for human, because it's the first sound we really hear? It's the female voice, the voice of the voice of the mother. I think maybe it's a relation of that.
Possibly, yeah. By the way, I'm very sorry we have ignored every question on YouTube so far. don't get discouraged. Keep on firing them. But we were just. Oh, there we go. Let's bring this one in from Plenitit. When you do remixes, do you decide that you want to do a remix of that special track and reach out to the label producer, or do you remix, or did remix opportunity come to you? What do we understand the question?
Yeah, it's like.
Oh yeah. Okay. Do you decide what to remix, or are you? Yeah. Okay. I would say I think that's true for all of us. I guess. Tell me if it's not, but usually you get asked to do one.
Half and half.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, half and half. I mean, there's groups that I like that are not in because I seldom do a techno remix anymore. So there's groups that I like that I'll maybe actually I can't tell you who the group is, sadly, but I was sitting at the SS Rotterdam in summer in this year, and I got a Instagram message from a label, and I actually just started talking to them, found out that the group were fans of mine, and then I thought, fuck it, I'm going to ask because I really like their music. Okay, if I do a remix, and they were like, "We'd love you to do a remix." And I think it has to be both, because otherwise, then it just becomes more of a commercial endeavor. And I think if you're a real fan of music, and it's outside of what you're known for, say like techno, then you ask. I think it's really, really important. I mean, I did that with, I think, A Place to Bury Strangers, which is like a sort of wall of sound group. I'm not sure about Soft Moon. Brian, you know Soft Moon.
Oh yeah, I love this guy. Yeah, well, love him. He's great.
I'm not sure if
big fan.
I think I even asked them, and because it's good to be a fan of different types of music. And have their trust as well. But then I remember, say, when, for example, probably all our favorite group here is Depeche Mode, right? I hope, maybe, I don't know. And when they asked me, I was like, holy shit balls, it's Depeche Mode asking me to do a remix. This is like the best feeling in the world ever. And I don't think I've ever been asked to do a remix by anyone that had that whole feeling of like, this is a group that I grew up with when I was a child. Not saying that they're very old or anything. I'm just saying I'm very young, and really enjoyed their music. And then I get to remix them, and the vibe that came from that was incredible. But sometimes you get asked to do remixes, and you say no because you honestly feel either the track itself is perfect, because sometimes it is. It doesn't need anything added, and I find it difficult to think about a techno remix now. It's like, what can be added? What's the thing? What's the special sauce that you're going to bring to this particular track that's going to do something special with it? And with techno, I don't feel that. I don't know. I don't feel like I want to go there anymore for doing remixes.
Well, you can, that's, I guess, why a lot of remixes, techno artists who are asked to remix other techno artists, they basically do an entire other track with one or two sounds of the original.
That's how it usually goes. Right?
yeah. Did you feel pressure to? I mean, you say you're a massive fan of the Depeche Mode. When you got asked to do a remix, did you tell yourself, okay, this has got to be my best one ever?
No. I just try to do my best one every time I do a remix.
Sure.
And I did two different mixes. I did a very slow acoustic mix, which then Fletch told me that they used to walk on stage to for a whole tour. It was their walk on stage track. I was like, holy shit, this is like beyond my dreams. Yeah. Beyond my dreams. And actually, Fletch told me that also in Rotterdam. A lot of Rotterdam action going on for an Amsterdam boy tonight. And I was talking to him backstage, and he told me that, and it blew my mind. And the other mix, I just wanted to do a heavy industrial mix, and I just enjoyed doing it. And I think the fact that Depeche Mode was such a big influence on me growing up, I didn't feel any pressure because I already felt in a way that they were sonic parents. Does that make sense, or does it sound really cheesy?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I think we're roughly the same age. I had the same relationship with their music when I grew up, and I actually did 2 remixes for them as well. And I just recently discovered the slower mix, which I never gave to them. And
Oh, wow.
the one, yeah, and the one that I ended up giving them was sort of like an industrial drum and bass mix. Although they, I guess they were, it was in the time when I was doing lots of techno, but it became something completely different. I was happy with it though, and
but those old days were amazing because you'd actually have couriers waiting outside your studio on motorbikes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have to wrap the DAT up. So you'd only listen to the DAT once to make sure, because those days DATs were really unreliable. So you'd then wind it up backwards and forwards and make sure it was really tight. You'd wrap it up in tin foil because the motorcycle courier would have bleed through from their radio. And then sometimes the DAT would actually end up at the mastering house and go, well,
yeah.
So you have to do all these things. And then you had deadlines in those days that actually were really true deadlines. It's like, well, the product needs to be out now. At this particular moment, we've got the mastering engineer waiting for you. The courier's outside. It's sort of, I didn't enjoy that side of it, but it did focus you.
Yeah, I mean, these days you can download loads of like outtakes or 24 tracks, like original recordings. The way they were recorded to tape, with all the parts separate. But back then, this was I've done a few remixes of like that, from sort of poppy bands with where you got like the whole 24 tracks split out on a DAT machine, on a DAT tape. But it still had quite some magic to it, to hearing, the original song, and then you hear all the parts individually.
Yeah.
And I was always like, really? Is this all it is?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, it's these parts are so simple, and it's they're so yeah. And it's like, if you put everything together and mix it well, it sounds fucking amazing, and it's a real powerful song. But these individual parts are usually, or very often, not really that special, with badly cut samples, with bad tails on them and shit like that, happens all the time. It's crazy.
They had so much trust in you as well, because they're actually they're really giving you their soul in such a basic format.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I actually heard Michael Jackson in a cappella from a tape in a studio next to me. It's like, oh, Shabbat. It sounds shit. It sounds like someone's scared of a rat or a mouse in the studio or something. But then when you put it all together, it just became this mighty track. And and I did some work with New Order and Electronic, and I remember that Bernard was very not happy about the fact that I moved his vocal higher up than he felt comfortable with.
Oh yeah.
He had all these things going on in those days. That was really, really interesting. But yeah, I mean, back in those days as well, when you had the stems given to you and you had them in such weird format, it was
magic.
Thankfully, the beginning of the CD player, CDR.
Yeah.
And then you got them there, and then you put them together. And I still didn't have enough capacity in the computer, so I had to sample everything, and then put everything on a sample map so that all the vocals would be sampled. And everything placed on one separate key of each phrase and stuff. If you change the BPM, forget it. It's like really complicated. And if you want to keep the origin of the song. And I remember the first time that I actually managed to download a remix to someone was Terence Fixmer. And I had to leave the 33.6 kilobaud modem on all night just to send the track, and hoping that it didn't stop in the middle. And it took 14 hours, I think, to send Terence the remix. Funny old days. Sorry, I went on a bit too much there.
Yeah, good stories. No, but I did the whole magic of hearing multi-tracked tracks. It kind of puts things in a perspective that you were never expected. It's pretty cool. Have you any of you like Jess or Brian done any remixes like that with where you got like the whole tape split out and outtakes from other people? That kind of gave you the insight in how they were made.
I did, but honestly, I did a couple of Depeche Mode remixes, and I just take the vocal, and then because that's what you want. You want the vocal, and then tried to recreate it in my style. You know, like how would I do the kick drum and the bass line? But yeah, you want the vocal. That's the magic. And then the worst part was the last remix I did for them. They had this new rule that you couldn't affect Dave's voice. I had all this distortion and all this crazy dub stuff going on, and they're like, "Sorry, we have to ask you for a clean mix also because there's like this new rule that Dave doesn't want any effects on his voice." So the version so all the best mixes are the ones that are not released. Like I did like a 12-minute dub, and then Chris helped me with that one, and that's the one I play in all my sets, and then people love that, but it's not released because they took the 4-minute radio remix. So there's that. There's always that stuff. But I just took the voice, and then it's a lot easier to sync up a voice than all this other music and stuff.
I did the inverse once. I actually did a remix for Placebo, who I really like, and they did a cover of Life Is What You Make It. And I thought, well, they're asking me for a remix. Everyone knows this song, so I actually took the vocals completely out.
Okay.
Because it made more sense to me, and I actually released it, and I was really surprised and happy. But
yeah. But yeah, back to the question about remixes. It's nice to ask someone you respect, if you can do a remix. It doesn't hurt to ask, if you do a good job, they'll release it. But it's if you're not asked to do it, there's no harm in approaching people.
I don't think anyone should be shy, especially if you're a fan of a group. Jess, who's your biggest, most important group that you would love to remix?
Group.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a tricky question. Most of the musicians I like died. So, yeah, I would say Prodigy.
Dead musicians count as well.
Okay, Prodigy. Yeah, the Prodigy.
Yeah.
So would you try and phone up Liam and say, you were just so inspirational to me, would it be possible to remix one of your new tracks?
I think rather not. I think if I would have met him personally, and there would have been a chance to, maybe it would have, come up as a topic, maybe I would have asked, but otherwise I'm too shy to do that.
You should do it.
Well,
I think Paula Temple remixed the Prodigy, right?
Did she?
I think it was on RNS. So I know I think they're up for remix. I think I'm right. I'm not 100% sure. Stoor asked a question like, "Who is our favorite bands ever?" Now I'm going to completely go non-electronic, and then I'm going to go.
What bands have influenced you at the beginning of your career? What music you listen to now? Okay,
and I would say the Damned, and I saw them actually here in Zaandam, which I thought was great for the Damned to be in Zaandam and Amsterdam. So I've seen them play a lot over here. I never saw them in the UK play, and I would say the Damned, and I would say Devo, and actually broadcasting them live from Sonar on my radio show was an amazing privilege. But it's and John Fox, like the very early people. I mean, John Fox. I don't know if you know much about John. But let me explain if people don't. John was part of Ultravox. Actually did some of the better Ultravox tracks, I think, in my mind. Could have been in the Sex Pistols, I think. I interviewed him for my radio show, and he had such a massive history. And he's like the most intelligent person that I think I've ever interviewed. And John Fox, what he did with the Metamatic album, it shaped me. It's one of the reasons why I call one of my tracks "No One's Driving," because he did a track called "No One's Driving" on there. And I think musical influences from when you're growing up are invaluable. I mean, I still listen to The Damned in the gym. Still, I think I've listened to that album maybe a few thousand times now. Jess, what about you? What about who was the first bands influencing you?
I really like Linkin Park and Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ja, toch.
Huh?
I said, ja, toch.
Oh, right. I thought you said the Ruttles. I was like, okay, that's cool. Joachim, who's your favorite?
Well, I mean, I'm really bad at names, but what I can if I can sort of reconstruct what I've always liked, it's electronic sounds, you know. So even electronic sounds in pop music, you know. I mean, my dad used to play things like ELO, you know, which was a very
fucking genius.
Yeah, absolutely. The songwriting and the production is just fucking amazing. So that has been one of my earliest sort of bands that I got into. But I think most of the stuff that I sources of information were rather different than right now, you know. So it was basically radio and finding out about music when you were record shopping, you know. Those were the two main sources. And early on I went to import record shops, you know, stuff like that, and you learn about music, you know, like early electro, sort of late Italo. It sort of crossed over into, you know, from new wave, you know, the poppy side of things. I don't know. There is not really a specific band that made a massive impression on me, but the whole sort of development of electronics in music was something that really appealed to me. I've always been obsessed by sound, you know. It's the sound that gets me, not really the lyrics or the structure even, you know. It doesn't really matter if it's slow or hip hoppy or fast or angry or whatever, or coming from whatever cultural niche, you know. It doesn't really matter as long as the sound appeals to me. So I guess, yeah. It's a bit vague, I guess, but
were you into classical music at all? Classical music?
Yeah, later on. Yeah. I've actually a lot of things that people told me, you know, you should listen to this. If this is the music you are making, you should check that out, because, you know, things like Brian Eno, I've you know, discovered even after I've done ambient tracks. You know, I didn't even know who the guy was.
Right.
And then I found out about him, you know, I think in the early 90s when. And then, you know, got into Roxy Music and stuff like that, you know. And I've never really been into the cultural thing of surrounding music more into the sound, you know. Sound is the thing I go for.
Van Gelis would be important to you?
Yeah, I knew of it, but I mean, no, not really. I would say no, not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian?
For me, there was a record that made me want to make music, and but when I heard Purple Rain when I was a kid, I would dream of being a rock star like Prince. But it wasn't until I discovered Nine Inch Nails, that first record, is when I was like decided to like get a sequencer and a keyboard and try to make my own music. Because what drew me to that album was it was a mix of hard electronic dance music and rock and roll. So you had guitars and you had synths, and the guitars and the synths complemented each other and they didn't cancel each other out. And it was that energy of having songs with guitars and vocals and this really pristine synthesizer sequences going. And that blew my mind. That mixed the two worlds. I was into Love and Rockets and I was into, like, you know, Acid House. And to mix those two types of genres together, that was like, I was sold. So that, I guess it was Nine Inch Nails, and that led me into Nitzrev, Meat Beat Manifesto, Ministry, Fetus. So I got into all this industrial music.
So Brian, do you think that Nine Inch Nails Trent, he sounds a little bit like Seal.
I never
His
even
voice,
thought
yeah.
of that. I'm gonna probably never listen to it ever
I'm
again.
going to destroy this for you, because if you listen to I'm Just a Copy of a Copy of a Copy,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me it sounds like Seal.
I never even thought of that.
It sounds like it sounds like Seal. You'll never unhear this now.
Okay.
Well, that I hope it doesn't ruin your Nine Inch Nails experience, Brian. Yeah, one band I would actually now I kind of recall, you know, the things like Mantronics. I was really into that, you know.
He's a lovely guy.
Oh yeah, I've never met him.
I met him once,
right?
in
It's Curtis. Yeah.
The shit that he did with King of the Beats and
Yeah, I was a massive fan. I mean, I got into music earlier than that, but that just sort of shaped my that was the moment when I actually started making music, and those were the, you know, that kind of sound, you know, the really electronic sort of it's hip hop, but I don't think there's anything like it, you know. There's no other band sounding like it.
And his stuff with Tila Rock as well, right?
Yeah.
Breaking Bells and things.
Yeah, and he became a bit poppy with I think Joyce Sims. There's a Joyce Sims record, but I was but I was really into the production style, you know, the cutting, you know, sort of the repeating, stuttering kind of things, and the 808, and that sound was just made a big impression on me for sure.
Because going back to tape, there used to be two guys that used to do incredible tape edits of Mantronics, which are like Chep Nunez and Omar Santana.
Yeah, are those the Latin Rascals, or are they different people?
I thought they were, until Patrick actually corrected me and said there was someone else, but I always saw them as Latin Rascals.
Yeah.
In my mind, because I think they did tracks like Lisa's Coming and other things like that, and Chet and Omar, like Omar OO edits were ridiculous. I mean, when you hear what they were doing then you hear what Freddie Fresh was then doing as well, you can see how that was all developing. And the tape edit was a real skill. I mean, it was before the sampler really came in. The sampler just destroyed the need for tape edits. But you take a sample of your own track sometimes, and then you record it in 2 tracks, and you intersperse it in there with some weird sample edits. To be honest, I think the Mantronic mega mixes and stuff like that were a combination of both. You know, they were both cut up things. Yeah, who is it? There were both tape cuts and sample techniques, I think, as a combination. I might be mistaken, but that's what it sounds to me like. It sounds really like a sequenced sometimes, you know, like a sequence. I'm going to be really nerdy, because there was one track that I think Mantronics did. I think it was Breaking Bells. And because I saved up all my money working in a shoe shop for 2 drum machines, one of them was a Yamaha RX21 and the other one was a 21L, standing for Latin. I was actually really disappointed with one of the tracks, Mantronics, because it was a preset. It was pattern 56, and I was really I thought shit, even Mantronics uses a preset. Yeah, I was like, no, this can't be the case. But hey,
I thought they were using the Studio 440, the sequential sampler as well.
I'm not sure, but the drum machine, it was like, I remember it because it was weird. I didn't even know what timbales were. I thought they were sweets or something. Timbales like, and it was like, he just used the preset pattern 56, motherfucker.
Right.
I can never use pattern 56 now because you've used it. So yeah.
Another record that I was really into and still am is PSK by Schoolie D. It's just 909, fuckload of reverb, and him rapping a bit stoned and sloppy scratching. I love it.
Yeah. But I think the Prodigy really used that drum beat as well, right?
I think everybody stole that at some point. Yeah. But it's a 909. Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah. It still sounds amazing. I mean, sometimes you remember tracks in your head, you know, how when they sounded absolutely big and massive back in the day, and then you listen back now and they sound like shit, but the PSK track is still fucking slamming. It's crazy.
I'm going to name a track that actually I loved when I was at school. Probably none of you know, and that's a track by XTC, and it's called "Making Plans for Nigel."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No one knows it.
I know that.
You know it.
I might know it. I'm just really bad at it.
You would know it. You would know it if you heard it. Yeah.
But the bass line and the drums, like I think it's Andy Partridge, total genius. growing up in England at that time was so fortunate because there was so much amazing production that was going on, and it was sort of techno without being techno. It was really, really interesting. But Making Plans for Nigel, apart from having an amazing political intonation with the lyrics about how crappy life could be in England at that time, and having such an amazing drum programming. And I remember on TV, because you were saying there weren't sources available. There was a record shop and radio, but also there was TV programs for young kids in England, and they actually had like a whole thing of going to the XTC's recording studio. It was for like 6 minutes. It had the same effect on me as seeing Cool DJ Herc in that hip hop video. It was inspirational, totally inspirational.
Yeah, the limited sources of where you could find things definitely helped. Getting having things making a big impression on you. There was this hip hop documentary by an early MTV presenter. I don't think it was for MTV, but his name was Marcel van Tilt, a Belgian guy, and he made a documentary called Big Fun in the Big Town. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's on YouTube. You should be able to get it somewhere. But it's got like a 16-year-old Schoolie D, and it's got like LL Cool J, and it's got Grandmaster Flash, and all these early hip hop guys from New York, and just Roxanne Shante, and all these in it, and it made such a big impression on me, and I know that it did as well on a lot of people my age around that time, because everybody I talk to who is from the same era. That was the one that got everybody started. It's funny. I think that was in 86 or 85 or something.
Yeah. I think with that Cool DJ Herc, I wouldn't have wanted to be a DJ. Seriously, really seriously, because I think when I saw him in his cowboy hat, obviously I'm not going to wear a cowboy hat, but when I saw him in his cowboy hat in a open top car with the speakers out the back.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
And I thought, I want to do that.
He's got decks in his car as well. Yeah, funny.
What hip hop you into, Jess? Apart from Wu-Tang?
Sorry, what?
What hip hop are you into apart from Wu-Tang?
Oh, a lot. Busta Rhymes, Eminem, quite a few different things. From the newer stuff, I'm not having so many favorites. I liked some stuff from Drake, but I'm more into old school stuff for sure.
Yeah, I think it was the 90s were kind of a peak for hip hop, especially in America.
I think the 80s were the best though.
Or maybe I'm thinking the 80s, somewhere between the 80s. It was like
late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
It sort of finished. Hip hop finished with me with Tim Dog, and then came back with Run the Jewels. But I think from 81 to about 92, hip hop for me, that was the golden era. And,
that was amazing.
And Tim Dog just destroying NWA was like, and Kool Moe Dee destroying LL Cool J, like those battles that no one have anymore because everyone's so nice. But those battles were fun. It's good. The hip hop like Marley Marl. I mean, I think they just produced shit on a 4-track cassette and distorted the hell out of a microphone. Like with Biz Markie, distorted the hell out of a microphone, and those techniques were amazing as well. Recording techniques.
Yeah, same is true for early house and acid records. They were very often just on a cassette or a 2-track tape machine. Yeah. So we're spending all this time in the studio getting things right, and it can be so simple, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
It is. It does say something about authenticity, though. If you can get away with something sounding technically completely imperfect, but with lots of character and lots of authenticity. To be honest, that's what I'm chasing all the time. Something not necessarily crappy sounding, but something that sounds as if has always supposed to be like that. Like a Polaroid or something. You know what I mean? Something simple, but with character.
I find I'm always trying to make the same record, just better. Like I'm always trying to get this perfect mix in my head of dub, techno, industrial, pop. I'm just always trying to find this perfect mix. And every time I do an album, I'm just trying to fine tune them. But I'm always trying to make the same record. I find, like, I have this idea in my head what a perfect record is, and I haven't made it yet.
Is it modeled after something that already exists, or is it?
I think,
is it
I think it's based on a few influences, you know. So it's.
Should we get really technical?
Huh?
Should we get really technical?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let's go technical.
Really, really nerdy.
Well, tell me about your outboard, because I mean, you know, this is the knob Twiddlers Hangout. So what's the knobs you're using? You know, your hardware. Are you still using the stressors?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
The stressors. I'm not going to tell you everything because I have some secret equipment, but the stressors, Fatsos, SSLGs, Smart Research, Avalons. I mean, that's my kink right there in the Knob Twiddlers Hangout. Is compressors. I do like some plug-in compressors, but I never feel that they actually physically change the sound in the same way. It feels like an effect as opposed to a physicality. I don't know if that's my mind playing tricks on me, but it doesn't gel it the same way. There's a few plug-in compressors that I like. Notably by Eventide, like Omnipressor. It does something quite special. But you can't compare a plug-in to a real TG. You can't compare a distressor to a real distressor. It just doesn't exist at all. So yeah, I really adore using compressors. But I'll tell you a little secret about my compressors is that I very rarely twiddle those knobs.
You got to say the same setting for all the processing.
You get to a
like
point
a favorite
where
setting. Yeah,
you get to a point, and it's I wouldn't want a total recall compressor because I don't need that at all. I think as a mastering engineer that makes sense because it's a different sound coming to you and you're trying to make something unified. That makes more sense. But I actually have my compressors. I might twiddle them a little bit, but they would say the same thing, and then I will send source material to them that I know will fit that compressor. And if it doesn't, I'll try another compressor.
Yeah, so you choose the right one for the right job, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, lots of engineers work like that. You know, they have them all. You know, they have like the whole rack full of compressors, and they just jump from one to the other until they find the right one for the right job. Yeah,
it's the same thing you were saying earlier on. Like if you had everything wired up at the same time, you don't want to go over here to do that. And I think because a lot of compressors exist in studios, like loads of them, you don't want to be on your hands and knees away from the stereo center, adjusting it until you get the right moment. You know what a character of a particular compressor is, and you know that's what you want from it, and that's what you're going to get.
Well, lots of them also actually have a sweet spot. You know, they sound terrible if you overdrive them, or if you use them mildly. You just there is always an area or a range where they just sound the best they can. You know,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a mastering compressor, physical compressor as well, and that one I do change because obviously the track needs to, have changed the compressor. It will never work the same setting all the time.
So then you finish your track all the way up to the final master, or is there something?
I can do.
Right.
I do like to give it to another set of ears, as you say, because I think that's vitally important. I think it's really important to work with someone. I try to explain this to the students as well. To work with someone, have a good relationship with the mastering engineer, to give you a different perspective, because it's what I call when you get Guantanamo Bay'd. Yeah. When you listen to a track constantly, you believe your own hype. Mm-hmm. And if you have someone else listen to it, that's really good. And I was really lucky to work with probably one of the best techno mastering engineers that ever existed, and that was Niels in the UK.
Yeah, the Exchange.
Who sadly passed away. And I would enjoy our sessions sitting there and learning from him, watching him, asking him questions, and him always replying with a smile while he's doing something.
Yeah.
So I'd learn from him, and then I can do a rough master or even a finish master. Yeah. But what I do is I do a finished track with maybe about 6 to 8 dB of headroom, leaving a top and a tail, so the engineer can actually hear what noise I've got in the studio and how it's working. And then I also do a rough master, and I say, this is how I envisage it to be sound, but more polished.
Yeah, like an example master, yeah.
Exactly.
I sometimes do that as well, yeah.
That's really important, I think, because it's too easy now. I mean, you've got this horrible lander thing, which I think just puts it through an L2. I don't know what it does.
Have you tried it?
No, I won't. They asked me at the beginning. No. I want humans to be involved still.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know if it's any good or any bad, but maybe people in the comments can if anybody has experience. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I agree. It should be something that is done by somebody who has really good ears instead of just making shit loud.
With a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
With a fresh perspective. And also, if you've done an album, you want someone to actually hear all the different time moments and actually make it sound really that it actually all fits together. And that's an art form. That's really an art form.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Just have
Carole King.
everything sit in proportion. Yeah, that's very important actually for the listening experience. Yeah.
And also the actual tracks when they go together. I mean, Carole King, I think, spent 9 months putting her album together so that all the tracks made sense in the right order. I think that's quite a long time, but I think it's an important thing to do.
Absolutely.
But all the effects stuff, I used to have. I think I see in the back. It's a very poor thing sometimes, but I think I see in the back you have some eventides. Am I right or wrong, Joachim?
Me?
Yeah.
But
H3000 is it
over there? I always get confused.
Is it an H3000?
Oh, I love that.
I've got the 4000 and the 8000. Yeah.
Wow, really?
Because I used to have the Orville, which I absolutely adored. But then, and I also had a Bricasty, reverb and lexicons and stuff like that. But the thing is, if you went through MIDI to change everything in the same way that you can do in the track, you would end up with some sort of zipper noise. It was never very convincing. So actually, I got rid of all my effects and everything is in the box, and it's so much better. And Sound Toys rock.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but there is something about the eventides though, because they can be like you said, they can be tweaked by MIDI, so you can actually use them as an instrument. Yeah. You can even sequence some parts of it. So it's more like for me, it's more because the structure is in the back end. It's basically modular effect processor, so you can make your own sort of chains and stuff. I haven't done it for a while, but I used to do it a lot, and making my own presets, which are still in there.
The first eventide that I saw was at RNS, and then I discovered how they did like Hercules 7 Ways to Jack, and I was like, "That's the voice I want."
Yeah, but I don't know. There's something about these things. I haven't heard in plugins. Maybe I'm listening to the wrong plugins, but there's this instant shine and a richness to the sound when you run something through it. It's a really makes everything sound really expensive.
Yeah,
and sound designing.
And Eventide also do a thing called avionics, because I used to learn how to fly planes.
Yeah. They built air navigation equipment and effect processors. Says something about the company.
That's the shit I want in my plane. I don't want a Behringer fucking avionics thing going on.
Yeah.
So Brian and Jess, what are your favorite sort of compressors, or do you have like go-tos that you want for a sound?
Jess, you want to go first?
Go first, Brian.
Oh, I really like the FabFilter family. I use that filter a lot. I learned that from Chris. Chris Liebing taught me this, because if you know Chris's mixes, it's like you got this low frequency this filter that comes in and out of sounds, like slowly, and it's really warm. And it's the FabFilter. And
you mean the Simplon FabFilter? It's like
Pro Q3 or whatever version they're on now.
Oh, that one, yeah, okay.
And you just automate it, and it's kind of nice because you get all those frequencies on both. You get all the in between frequencies, and you find it, and you can lock it in, or you can have it move. But that's like probably my favorite filter. I like everything that FabFilter. Is that the name of the company?
Yeah.
I like everything that they make. They're like it's real really nice sound. Otherwise, I'm happy with a lot of the Logic native filters, effects, and stuff. The space delay, I love that. Space echo. What else?
Camel.
Yeah, I kind of got away from native instruments. I don't use. I use like some of this granular synth stuff, but for effects, no.
You were heavily intonated when I first met you in the studio.
Yeah, I was like Reactor. I was a Reactor person, and then I was, they have all these like programmable patches and user patches and stuff. But I ended up becoming more comfortable with the Logic ES2 synth, and I probably make 90% of my sounds in that synth.
And Jess?
Yeah, as Brian, I'm a really big fan of the fab filters, especially the EQ or the multiband compressor, the Timeless, the Saturn, and hardware like I just have the Terra Echo from Boss, which is really spacey, really trippy, and the Memory Man. That's all I have in hardware. I'm not a big fan of pedals, to be honest. So.
And who here likes to sidechain, compress, or EQ?
That was a thing. I remember like when we were back in the day, Dave, when I was in Motor and doing gigs with you, and the sidechaining was like those electro days. It was like everything was sidechained to hell, and that was like a sound, Justice, all that stuff. It was like it became a sound, and I remember sidechaining everything to the kick drum, and I don't do it anymore so much. Yeah. That phase kind of came over.
Is that a curse word for you, Dave? Sidechaining?
Yeah, whenever I teach people, it's like, please don't sidechain.
Yeah.
Well, unless you know what you're doing.
Maybe 2% of the time you can sidechain.
A little bit if you need to pull back.
Don't sidechain the fuck out of everything so it sounds like an asthmatic walrus.
Yeah. Just so the kick can cut through. Yeah. I understand you pull it a little bit, but it became...
Just learn to EQ. Learn to EQ. Because EQ is like the most powerful tool.
It is. But not a lot of people know how to EQ. I mean, it's an art form in itself, and that's difficult. EQ is where it's at.
I would even say learn to level, because before that's even one step back from EQing.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
No, I agree. I've seen people talk about
everything and everything at 11. Just turn everything up.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I mean the most basic techniques are still the most difficult to master. Like leveling and EQing is actually you can go a million ways addressing a problem. Or not a million ways, but you can try. There are so many ways of using EQ, like boosting, dipping, getting things sort of unclutter things by using EQ. There's so many things you can do with it. You can fuck things up really, really, really bad if you use it in the wrong way. Because
every sound is competing with each other, and they have a full frequency. And you have to give a sound a certain bandwidth. Yeah, you can't. Not every sound has to have the whole EQ frequency. So you have to learn how to carve out the right sound for each sample. So they're not competing with each other. That's like that's difficult.
EQ is the real sex job of this life. It's the most beautiful. If you get everything communicating to each other, it's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah. True.
And I love it. And I think it's important to actually have a good set of ears, obviously, to have speakers that you know and trust, set up in a good way, really, really important. And headphones that you only use really for stereo positioning, unless you live in a flat and you can't listen to music on speakers properly.
Right.
And then also to get, and it's really cheap now, to get really good visual analytical software, because it helps you memorize where the frequencies are by seeing them and then attaching it to your memory when you hear them. So, I mean, like, for example, SPL, which I think is actually a really underrated company, sadly, because I think some of their stuff looks a little bit like the old Behringer Clarke Technic stuff with silver and black. But they're a really, really good company. And also they do some cool plugins. And there's one called Plugin Alliance called SPL Hawkeye. And that's a very good analytical tool if you don't get a DK audio thing, or even make something through TC Electronic, which is like €200, and you can put it on a plugin. It's an actual physical meter, and it will teach you about stereo. It'll teach you about phase, especially if you're living in a flat and you can't play music loud enough to actually hear what's going on, and you don't have a phase switch or a mono switch. And it will teach you everything about how it is. Fast Fourier transformation, so you can see the frequencies. If you boost up the dB of the meter, you can actually see how the frequency overlaps and goes down, where the transient of the kick drum is, if you want to move that in a slight different way, if you want to allow the bass line through, or you want the bass drum to come through. It shows you the frequencies, and it's a really valid tool. And I think that if more people could learn how to EQ, then we would be in a much happier situation with music production.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, somehow I never really got into the visual things, you know. I do check I mean, most of the plugins we discussed, like the Fab filters or even the native plugins in Ableton or Logic, they have visualizations, or you know, you can switch it on at least to kind of show you what's going on. And I use that, you know, when it's there, I'll have a look. But yeah, I mostly rely on how things sit together. You know, that's something. Even though you can become really scientific about how an individual sound should be EQ'd, eventually what you're after is to have it sit well with the other ones. So sometimes that even means that you have to do things which are probably not very scientific, like leave something in like the 20 hertz range, you know, going, even though it's taking up space and bandwidth. You know, sometimes it just adds that little thing to glue it to something else that's going on. You know, I don't know. It's I'd much rather rely on those things. You know, how do things level out together, and how do things sit together? You know, that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah, we often get questions what people like us mean by having things sit together, sit well together.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, it is you know, if everything sounds in the right proportion, and if everything is helping it, all other things in such a way that everything does its job in the best possible way, and if it sounds like a coherent final thing, you know, that is probably when things sit well together.
Yeah.
If nothing is sticking out or ruining the obscuring things, or I don't know, or sticking out, being harsh or painful, or
Well, sometimes it's good to have that dynamic. If something that's too loud, that's great.
Yeah, but that's dynamics. That doesn't mean that it doesn't sit well with the other things, you know.
You get ear fatigue if everything is competing with each other. There's too many frequencies. You get ear fatigue. You want to be able to like listen to something loud without hurting your ears, and that the art of that is it's like you said, it's in the levels and the EQ.
So another question: whether or not you agree, all of us here are actually 95% in the box. And what I mean by that is that all our sound sources are coming out either in the computer or via a line. Who here uses microphones?
Yeah, sometimes.
What do you use them for?
Wow.
Yeah, you go first then.
No, I mean, first thing you think of is like you're going to use it for a vocal, but I see where you're going. I don't know. I mean, I have sampled. One time I sampled myself banging a fork on a pizza cutter, and I got these metallic sounds. And I'll do that sometime, metallic stuff. But I haven't done that in a while. I miss the days when you could sample something and you could go across a sampler and hear all the different pitches. And
you can still do that.
You can, but and back in the day, that's all you could do. And you just.
But it had that anti-aliasing filter, which sounded really interesting when you fucked it up on a third of an octave or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So
get Samplex. It's a good plugin. You can get that back.
What's it called?
Samplex.
Okay.
SAMPLEX.
Yeah.
Jess, what do you record on vocals, on microphones?
Vocals, and I'm also sampling sounds like Brian. Also some metallic stuff, or sometimes it's just really random. Something falls down or some sounds emerge. I was like, okay, maybe I could use that. So I have a few microphones for that purpose.
I will encourage people to try not to use presets. I think the more you can spend time on making your own sounds, the more rewarding it is. Not only rewarding, but
it'll distinguish your thing by miles, instead of you can flip presets all day and find a good sound, but if you layer it with something that you've sampled yourself, or you mic it and by just miking your speakers or your room and put it back in, that makes a hell of a lot of difference in how how unique you can make something sound.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I use it for. I sometimes have mics open while I'm recording, and it just, whatever happens in the room just gets recorded with it, and I can, because I multi-track it, I can delete it, but it's still there, and sometimes I even purposely, I've done a project here with Dave Function, and that was in the beginning when the room was still more empty, and the airlocks were all empty, which there are two like concrete airlocks on either side of the room, and we put speakers in there and mic'd the room, which was a massive reverb, like a pure concrete spanking, and we just played the drum machines and really loud into that room, and just use that as a reverb, and it sounds, it's actually, there's no way you can get that kind of reverb with a modeled reverb, or it does sound different, it sounds more like a drum machine in a basement.
You should try Eventide Black Hole. Actually, it's pretty funky. It's pretty.
You mean
fun.
the pedal?
They have a plug-in version too.
Oh yeah. I've got the pedal. Yeah. It's cool.
Really
yeah.
Altiverb is nice too.
Sorry.
Altiverb. Yeah.
Yeah, Altiverb.
Yeah.
I got two questions from Stoor. One was about the compressor, which was the C2 thing. I use that mostly on high percussion, sometimes synthline. If I use it on synthline, I use the crush function because it does some weird fuck ups to transients. And then what's the weirdest, this will make you laugh, what's the weirdest thing that I've ever used a microphone for? So the weirdest thing that I've ever used a microphone for is, I remember back in the day when we had magazines, not the internet, you'd find out how things were recorded. And I remember Mark Moore from S Express saying that he used a spray for a hi-hat.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, I'm going to do my little twist on that, and I'm going to use my asthma inhaler for a hi-hat as well. But I sprayed it into the microphone, fucked up the microphone, and didn't get a hi-hat at all. So that's the weirdest thing I've ever done on a microphone. That was a long time.
Okay, I thought you were going to say that was the last thing it ever recorded, but I didn't even get it. So that's funny. Yeah, I mean there's like loads of studio accidents I can tell you about, but I've ruined things in my day as well.
Well, what's the weirdest thing you've ever microphoned? The weirdest thing.
Me, I don't know. Weird, I don't know. What's weird? I mean, anything that makes sounds, anything that you can pick up with a microphone, is and is useful. It's fine, right? I've never stuck into weird places or anything. It's just I don't know.
I know, actually, if Abe Fenton is watching, I seem to remember that he didn't sample so much, but recorded with the microphone. This is really freaky. If I remember correctly, about 15 years ago, he recorded in his then house in, I think it's Nottingham, which is apparently the best city in the world. It's not. And he recorded in Nottingham just the night in his house. And maybe I got this wrong, but he's definitely the kind of guy that would do this kind of weird shit. So he just recorded the nighttime in his house with a microphone.
Okay.
And then he played it back at half speed and heard the weirdest shit possible. Really strange, ghostly shit. Like seance board stuff.
Right.
Amazing.
Well, I mean, if you play anything slow, you'll discover lots of things, no matter what recording it is, and even if you go like a quarter of the speed or even slower, the slower you get, especially with tape, with digital, it gets grainy and shit. But if you play tape really, really slow, you keep discovering sort of micro things and really, really strange stuff, actually nice to as a sound design technique, just to record random shit and then just on tape,
Oh,
and
when
then
you play it
slow
low.
it down really, really slow.
Yeah.
I know, not even half speed, but actually really, really slow. You know.
Right.
What was
Yeah.
the a piece of equipment or software that got each one of you into actually, I want to do this? What was the inspirational thing that actually made it exciting, feasible, and possible that you want to make music? Was it a drum
Turntables.
machine? Okay.
Drum machine.
Apart from DJing.
Right. Well, I mean, I started out as a hip hop DJ, so that was my instrument. But yes, after that it was a tape, a reel to reel, and after that drum machines, so nothing synth like, or that synth came later. I had a tape and drum machines, and I made loops with the tapes, and then stack, re-record the loops on cassette and bounce it back and then sort of overdub. That was the it's sort of very time-consuming way of my first recordings.
Yeah. My dad's organ was the first thing, and
a
tape machine. I used to record all the drum machine things. They had all these like weird. I used to record those, play them backwards, and then record organ sounds on top of it, play that backwards again, and then overdub. And I was about 10 at the time.
Wow! Do you still have those recordings?
No, I have a few tapes that are left. Do you remember the TIAC 52s that look like miniature reel-to-reels?
Yeah.
I have a few of those that I put together. Some things on like Todd Terry mega mixes on 4-track. But no, I don't have anything like that. What about you guys? What were the first machines that brought you into this realm that we love? Brian, Jess?
For me, it'd be the sampler, but not in a Beastie Boys way, but the sampler changed my life because I could sample CD. I used to sample like all my favorite bands. I sample the kick drum from the opening of a Depeche Mode song or whatever. What
was your first sampler?
It's Ensoniq.
EPS or the Mirage?
No, it was EPS 32. No, 16. It was 16. 16-bit.
You posh bastard.
Yeah, the 16-bit.
Not bad as a first sampler.
Yeah.
No, really not bad. I had the EPS it had 2 megabyte, right?
Yes.
And it cost a ridiculous amount of money to get an extra 2 megabyte cartridge at the back.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I just used 8 channels, and I just did the most I could with those 2 megabytes. But that was amazing. Samplers.
So you learn about Nyquist theory and truncation to the core of your life. So you would sample a bass drum at 22 because you didn't need it at 44.
Yeah.
You would truncate a hi-hat to within an inch of its life.
You don't waste any memory. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Jess, what was your first machine or software?
Drum machine for sure, TR8.
Okay. And what, you were making beats and you wanted to add more stuff to it, or?
Yeah, I was basically just making beats with that, rhythms, and just trying things. Sorry?
You still have the recordings of your first beats?
Oh. Yeah, I do, but I don't have access to this external disk because at some point it just gave up, so I have to repair it first. But it's there, lying dormant.
Do you guys get introspective over this period? Like I found myself going back to like the first electronic music I ever made, and like it's taken me 20 years to listen to what I used to do in the 90s, but for the first time I went back to it, and it's like I was finally ready after 20 years to listen to what I was doing with a sampler in the 90s. Dave, are you?
What did you think? What was the experience listening back to it?
My experience was like, that shit's cool. I should do that again. I was onto something, and then I went off and did this thing. But I could appreciate, the first intention.
I don't listen back that much. Normally, what happens is I'll have a friend that might play some stuff in the background. I think, oh, that was actually okay. I did all right with that.
Yeah.
I don't actively seek listening to my own music.
It's hard. I know, it's really hard.
It doesn't seem to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And the only introspect that I had was that, wow, I've spent a lot of time in airports in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And I really still don't miss it at all. And for the first, actually, this is a really important point. For the first time, I think, in my career, I'm not sure if this is going to bring up great music or not that people will love. I mean, I feel really proud of what we've been doing because I've been working with Mathilde. But for the first time in my career, I haven't had the whole issue of making music in between gigs and being tired.
Nice. That's amazing. Yeah.
And it felt like such a luxury.
Yeah.
And
so have you never taken breaks then, like recording breaks, or have you been really touring every weekend for the last, or have you taken weekends off? Or
I've taken so I had the car accident in Serbia from exit, and that really fucked me up a little bit. And I said, okay, I need to take time off, right? Because I'm not listening to what my inner self is trying to tell me. Yeah. And I did for a while, and then I didn't. And then I had what I believe was Corona, like about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago now, because they discovered that Corona has been around since 2012 in Chinese mines. Yeah, and I had pneumonia, and it's as sick as I've ever been. And I thought, okay, I need to take some time off. And then I was back on the road again. And I just didn't listen. I eventually started taking some time off. So I'd say to my agent, who's been my agent for 21 years, I want to take a weekend off a month. But then, of course, in the summer, you then think, well, I might as well just do these summer gigs because they're really fun. And then so you lose that. And then I take, historically, I've taken January off now for quite some years. But then I'm always fucking sick because like I'm exhausted from the year before. And then I'm just like lying there sick and okay, I'm ready to go back again. And I have tried to take some time off for studio work, but it never really worked because it takes me a little bit of time to warm up into the whole procedure of wanting to make music. So I'll sit in my studio sometimes and just update the shit out of everything so it's completely updated, and procrastinate, or watch Dave Pensado and procrastinate, or watch Sound on Sound and procrastinate. And then before I know it, 2 weeks has gone. I don't know what the fuck happened. I'm back on the road again. And this is the first time I've actually managed to get sleep for like a few months, get rid of all the fatigue and tiredness out of my system, and then went through a phase of procrastination, watching Dave Pensado, and then fuck it, I'm ready for this now. I want to do this, and I'm feeling it. And this is the first time I felt I've been in the studio where I've actually had the headspace to really become, hopefully, a maestro within Logic, at least up to the level of Aid Fenton, who I consider to be a maestro in Logic, and actually really get intricate at every single detail in the same way that I used to be when I was like opening machines up with System Exclusive and really trying to get the most out of machines with System Exclusive and programming those codes in there to get everything out on Cubase on an Atari. And I'm starting to feel that I'm now back there again, and it feels like the biggest fucking liberation that's ever been given to me.
That sounds great, man. That sounds really great. Sounds like you're really happy in your current flow with music. That's great. So tell me, what is the process with working with a cellist, right? Or a violinist?
Violinist. To be honest, let's just be polite and call her a fucking polymath, because she's pitch perfect. She can play piano. I could give her a bass guitar. She can tune it and play it. Violin, probably give her a fucking saxophone and she can play it with a violin. I mean, she's seriously musical. She went to Sorbonne. She went to the Royal College of Music. It's really amazing to see a non-electrical performance of music, just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you work with a real musician, especially one that doesn't require amplification, especially on something that's so shrill as a violin, you hear them practicing all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't escape from it. And that's how they get to where they're getting. So we did a piece for Le Grand Échiquier, Carmina Burana. If I ever hear that piece of music again, at least for the next years, I'm going to throttle someone because it's just too much to bear. But working with someone like that, it really changes the way that you relate to music. And she's learning Logic, and she's doing really well with learning Logic. And now she can sit in the machine and do not basic stuff, but above basic stuff, and do really good things. It's amazing. And also from because I worked in a classical music shop when I grew up. My first techno experience was actually Gustav Holst's The Planet Suite. When I was 12, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. The Planet Suite is so techno. And then I was into Tomita, of course, with Debussy. And then I was into Sate before, Tiestical and all those people did their nasty things with it. And lots of other classical pieces of music. So I already had that little bit within me of appreciation. But then when you work in this environment, it's a new environment. And actually the professionality is different as well. When I was working on this TV program, the professionality is the next level stuff. So
tell me about the roles, because you're talking about the violinist, but what is your part? What does your part consist of?
Okay, so Le Grand Échec aside, because that was a public performance, and also Charles de Gaulle aside, I'm sort of coming up with the musical vision of where I want it to go. She's trusting me with her violin, which is a 120-year-old beautiful piece of wood and soul. And she's trusting me with that. And we're talking together and say, like, for example, I'm doing a project which is a little bit more Nordic in theme. And sometimes she'll go more, because she plays at La Scala, she'll go a little bit more Mediterranean. I say, well, that's a little bit too Mediterranean. There's a bit too much flourish in the way. I'm looking for more legato, more emotion, more fragility. And she'll adapt and she'll move to that. So she's trusting me with the vision of the project. And she's trusting me with the electronic encapsulation of this. But then she also has a lot to say, and she's adding some music herself digitally, not just violin. And so we sort of swap roles. And then we're sitting there and we're listening, and I'm like playing with plugins. I'm getting something sounding really, really interesting. Oh yeah. And we both feel the same thing. And then we'll play with another plugin. It's like, we both go, no, at the same time. So it's really symbiotic in a really interesting way. I have worked only once before in the studio with someone, that was Jonas. And again, that was symbiotic, but purely in an electronic way. So it's really interesting. It's like, we wouldn't have had the time to do this if the world didn't stop still, because she'd be traveling around the world. Yeah. I'd be traveling around the world. We'd have a week or so to put something together, and it just wouldn't be the same.
Mm. Yeah. It's wonderful working with other people, and even if they're from the same discipline or a similar discipline, but you always find common ground. You always find a way to communicate, no matter how different the music is that each of the individuals are making when they do stuff by themselves. It's funny how that works. There's sort of this language which is not vocal, but still a very pure way of communication, very true, very intuitive way of communicating.
I'm passionate.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love collaborating. It's amazing.
Anyone else working with other people right now?
I like to work with people who do something better than I do. You want to elevate your music. You want to choose someone who can do something better than you can. That's why I started working with like other singers, because I got bored with the techno vocal. It's fun to do the grunty techno vocal, but to actually work with to work with like Zola Jesus, who's like an opera vocalist, opera vocals and techno and a little melody going on. It's like that's what excites me, is working with people who do things that I can't do. Otherwise I'll just do it myself. But it's fun to collaborate with people who bring something that you're not able to do. So you should seek that out. You really should. Collaboration is amazing. It's so easy to get inside your head and just do everything, but it takes a lot of courage.
I would say I find something that in every person that teaches me something, or like you said, like you say, you work with people who are better in something than yourself. Somebody's always better at something than yourself, or has a different approach, or opens your mind to certain processes or approaches. So I say I have never ever done any collaboration which was worthless to me. There's always a value in it, always.
Sure.
Yeah.
Josie, you working with anyone?
Yeah, I just recently worked with 2 people. One is from Spain. It's called Vibrations of Gravity. And one is Temudo. You probably know him. He's from Portugal. And
Cool.
yeah, gonna release both EPs. We work together on my label soon.
Are you working together physically or working together sending your ideas back physically? Okay.
Physically. We were quite lucky, as you just said, with Corona. We had the time and the chance to do that. And it was quite spontaneous, to be honest. So I think if not Corona, maybe this would have not happened yet, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really, really happy about that too.
So everyone's been had like a creative streak with the COVID lockdown.
I had 4 months of suntan time, which is amazing. Didn't have to go anywhere expensive or fly on a plane. It was happening here in Amsterdam, and actually it was happening in Rotterdam. I was quite a fervent visitor with my camera down there over the summer. But then for the last 3 months, it's been complete studio orgasm time. Like seriously, like it's been so.
It's nice to wake up and you don't know what day of the week it is, and you're like, let's make some music. That's how it used to be.
People say, "What are you doing this weekend?" It's like, "Oh, is it weekend?"
Yeah,
it's not like everybody goes to the airport again, and you go to a market now, and you can do your shopping the same time as everyone else for some reason. I don't know, but it's still nice. And then you start working. Oh yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask for, because obviously, like Joachim, you're sort of like in a casino where there's no natural light whatsoever, and probably having fresh air pumped in as well. Do you actually? Because when I first started making music, I was gitmoing myself all the time, listening to music for like 18 hours and going to sleep practically on what I was doing. Now I'm really firmly of the opinion that I really like to wake up at sort of like 7:30, 8 o'clock, have breakfast, have fresh juice, look after myself, and then head off to the studio about 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock, stay in the studio to maybe 6 or 7 o'clock, and then call it a day unless it's finishing off a project. Are you guys sort of office hours, or do you actually like to? I reckon that Jess is going to be complete nighttime, because I think she's younger than all of us. Well, definitely younger than all of us. I think you're going to be a complete nighttime person. What time do you guys work, Jess? When do you actually do your best work for making music?
Oh, it's very unspecific. Nighttime works well. I'm very creative at night times, but I'm also very creative in the mornings. So yeah, I start quite late in the evening and I finish around in the morning.
Brian?
I do my best work at about 10:35 a.m. It's like after a couple hours, a couple cups of coffee, and then I do my most meticulous, designing sounds and the kick drum and all that stuff. But I have to say, when I went to work with Joachim, we start in the afternoon, and we would work all night. And I have, I used to do that when I was a kid, and that was a fun time. But I'm more of I work best with coffee during the daytime. I'm in office hours. But having said that, the stuff I did with Joachim in the middle of the night it's nice.
I think that happened because when you got here, you got a massive delay, and we got stuck in traffic. So we started the first day. We started on a very we were after delayed. Dinner or something. Yeah. And then we were both so eager to get something going that we made it a long night. And then the next day became a late morning. And stuff like that. But usually I keep office hours, I would say, but I do work in the evenings. When I do collaboration or when I work on anything, it's during the day, but it bleeds into the evening and night. Depends. If I don't want to stop, I don't stop. And
snacks and tracks. Do you bring food into the studio, or do you go out for lunch?
No, I go back home. I live around the corner. I have sometimes I get food here, but usually when it's while producing music, it's usually it happens, but it's an exception. Usually it's pretty structured.
Yeah. And do you finish if you're near to finishing off a track, and it's almost, mind you, you're committed. You have to actually go straight from beginning to end, and that's it. But okay, for the other people, do you actually? The track's almost finished. I'm going to do it tomorrow. finish it off tomorrow. Does anyone do that or not?
I think it's so important to go back with fresh ears the next day.
And what about a weekend break? Is that even better? So like, this track is almost finished. It's Friday. Fuck it, I'm going to do this on Monday.
I don't know if what you do on a Friday night would sound good on a Monday, but I definitely I do believe in taking a day break before you finish something. I would always suggest not doing something in one day personally, because your perspective changes, and you'll have better ideas the next day. In my opinion, but.
And Jess?
Yeah, I think it's very important to do that because your ears are tired after a while. So it's always a good advice to take at least one night or one day off and then go back again.
I feel so sad for you, actually, because you've been standing up for 2 hours, right?
No, why you feel sad? It's really healthy for the back.
Actually, she's doing it right. That's how we should all do it.
But it's funny you say that. It's the thing people say most when they come to my studio. It's like, okay, but where do you sit? Like, do you have a chair? And I say, no, because I'm making dance music, so I cannot sit. It's like, and it's super unhealthy to sit. So I kind of used to do that.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, people. Well, we've been talking for longer than 2 hours, which is great. I mean, I don't want to spoil it or cut it off, but we. I would say let's give the people who are watching, if there is anyone watching still, a last chance to ask something or to say something, and otherwise we'll get into the plug round. Give everybody a chance to promote or say something about where people can find your music, or what you are doing, or any releases, remixes, projects, whatever. So if there's anybody with a question, this is your chance. Here we go. Oh, great chat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Still watching. Oh. That's good. People are still here. That's nice.
I think he's full on.
That's a really ear protection. Good. Yeah, good one. So sounds like Tamara is asking about hearing protection. So you want to go first, Dave, because you were.
Hi, Tamara. I hope you're well in Berlin. So ear protection is really, really good because it's very easy to get wrapped up in the enjoyment and adrenaline of the track, especially if you're working on bass. You want to pump the shit out of it. Yeah. And even in my old car, I had 128 or 132 decibels just in my car. You realize that it's not clever anymore. Although I will say that when I did Surrender Life Fest, I did actually enjoy having tinnitus the next day because I hadn't had that for ages. And it felt like I was actually at a gig, and that was good. But you do really have to take good care of your ears. And again, have different speakers and monitors. Sometimes it's really good to monitor on small speakers, just for compatibility anyway. Yeah. And just make sure that you don't be ridiculous with your levels.
Well, you can get things from the sound when you're playing it loud, but you can also get very important clues about the sound when you're playing very low, So I think I do both, and I switch all the time. I never play loud for longer than, I don't know, maybe a few minutes. I'm changing it all the time, changing the level all the time. Yeah,
it's important and to have a good monitoring system with volume switch where you can see what the volume is, because otherwise you're not sure. Never have your monitors, if they're active, click red, because that's bad for them anyway. But it also says, "Hey, rustikai," It's like you're way too much. Headphones, you have to be really, really careful of. I mean, Joachim is wearing, I believe, open headphones, which are much healthier for your ears. But closed headphones are actually very, very good for stereo placement. But don't listen to headphones too much until it's at the final mix stage, because they give you a false sense of security, and they're also much louder than you can believe. So just be very, very careful and allow yourself to have a blast.
Headphones also have a different way of playing transients than speakers, because you don't get the room tail. Yeah. You tend to put like very short sounds way louder than they should be.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my experience anyway. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but short sounds with no reverb, very short transient sound you tend to misjudge them on headphones.
Yeah.
Or I do anyway. I mean, I like a room to have a little bit of a room vibe, rather than a completely scientifically dead room. I get claustrophobic.
I have no treatment.
Yeah.
No treatment. I don't believe in treatment at all.
Yeah.
I think it only makes sense if you have many people working there, or a record executive or a band behind you, and you need the same sound everywhere. That makes sense. The other thing I like to do is listen, not in the stereo field sometimes, but subconsciously in the background, to see how it sounds like most people would listen to music.
Yeah.
That's really important too.
Yeah, for a room, I think it just should have a pleasant and sort of honest sound. And like you said, you need to know your system really well. But I mean, the studio is the place where you are creating, and you have to feel comfortable creating. That's the most important thing about a studio monitoring system. And then you can get really scientific if you have good monitors and they tell you the honest truth about what's going on. That's quite important. But at the same time, it needs to be something that is pleasant throughout the time that you are working on your stuff and just writing it and stuff like that, so it should really do both. Otto asks for the best studio snacks and beverages. Well,
Matcha.
Matcha is good. I like matcha. Black
Keeps
coffee.
you awake.
Black coffee and red wine.
Fair enough.
I don't allow any drinks into the studio.
I was going to say there are absolutely no rules in the studio, but you cannot have open bottles standing next to the gear. To always use the screw on your bottle, and
exactly.
And, that's it. other than that, no rules.
You don't go for the Rotterdam herring all in one and bite the tail off thing.
Yeah, the herring. Well, it's not really Rotterdam thing, but no, that would fucking make the studio smell. Herring. I don't know. Anyway, I think we should go into the last sort of plug round. Anybody wants to tell people where they can find your latest projects, or promote anything, or make people aware of anything you're doing? Brian, anything on your side?
Just before COVID, the weeks before COVID, I did an EP for Aufnahme and Wiedergabe. It's like label in Berlin, and that was 4/4 techno, like noisy. And then COVID happened, and I hated 4/4 techno. So then I started making an album of non-4/4 techno, which is going to be a new Black Asteroid album, which is what I'm mixing now.
Oh, wicked.
And then I also, going back to where I started with the 2-inch tape, I've revisited this first project I did called Halo Black, and I'm I guess making a compilation, remastering, and putting things together. So I'm re-presenting this project with everything that I've learned. So that's going to be an album which I'll be releasing in a couple months. So basically those two projects right now.
Awesome. Jess?
There's a lot of coming EPs. There's 2 Flash EPs and Flash recordings coming in Jan and February. And there's also 2 records coming on Luminal, which is my label. One with the artist I was mentioning, Vibrations of Gravity, and one with Temudo. And that's it. And you can find this on my website. It's blcklts.com, and Facebook, Instagram, as usual.
Awesome. And you, Dave, when can we see the results of your collaboration?
Well, first of all, I actually have a remix that's out of a track called T99.
Never heard of it. I've heard of T98, but I don't know this one.
It's inflation. Obviously, inflation, so it's T99, which is funny because when it came out, when I was on XL back in the 90s, it wasn't a track that I actually really felt for Anastasia. But actually, I sort of appreciated it from a distance. I think probably because everyone was playing it, and I was that guy that's, well, if they're playing it, I'm not playing it. Still am, I think. But actually, I sort of appreciated it, and I just made it into a breakbeat track. I had fun with it, and that was cool. Obviously, I am working on some new material. I think we aim to finish it because I think this thing that we're not allowed to mention is going to go on for some time, and I think we're going to finish it around May or June. We might be at the Concert Cabal here in Amsterdam soon, performing some different things, but that's going to be quite interesting, and hopefully there'll be more people allowed to be there, socially distanced and all that stuff. What else? I'm still doing my radio shows. White Noise is almost at 800 editions now, and I'm doing a Saga radio show, which is everything that I love that's not techno, and can be country, it can be punk, it can be synthesizers by like Yves Marais, different things, and yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking up the show actually today, and 860 something.
783 or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, it was some huge number. Crazy, man. That's great that you've kept on it for such a long time.
Yeah, I think the last time I interviewed you in person was at I Love Techno.
Yeah, it was ages ago. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. I think I'm gonna give one last shout out to the Stoor hoodies. This one, it's a black embroidered logo.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we did black embroidered T-shirts for Real Black Asteroid.
Cool.
Back in the day. It's the same guy, Tegendraads, the Rotterdam embroidery wizard.
Yeah.
So we've done hoodies, and they're available on Bandcamp, and they're pre-order only, so you can. Everybody who orders one before 11th of December will get one, and after that it's finito. So other than that, we're still doing the Stay Home Sound System this Sunday with a very special guest, doing a remote jam again instead of the studio jam here.
Is there latency with that?
That's taken care of, but it is. Yeah, there's no latency. I mean, So it's not. I mean, the syncing is not an issue anyway. But it basically there's some off-the-shelf stuff going on. It's nothing special, but it really feels like being in the same room, which is great. It's it's. I mean, you know that it's not with a person in the same room, but once the first few minutes have gone, it feels like making music with a person in the same room, basically. So that one is coming up this Sunday, and other than that, I would like to say the Patreon page is doing well. You can still get some spots in the masterclass. And I would encourage people to have a look at our Discord server, which is becoming a really, really fun place to hang out. It's basically one big live forum with audio music nerds chatting about gear and about music and everything. It's a really fun place to get connected to like-minded people and people who are into making music. So have a look there. The link should all be in the comments, description of the video, everywhere. So have a look, and thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks, Brian. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. Good to see you guys.
Great to see you, Dave. And
nice to meet you in hyperspace in June.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Jess. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
So thanks again. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Have a nice evening. Ciao, ciao. Bye, bye. Doei. Doei. Doei.
Hello.